Welcome to 3-Minute Reality Check. Today, we're debunking anti-trans rhetoric in 3 minutes or less. Let's debunk the claim from this creator that the LGBTQ+ community, or more specifically the trans community, is trying to, quote, normalize sterilizing children, mutilating children, allowing children to be subjected to irreversible things, end quote. I used study and demographic data to determine the following. There are 399,000 transgender parents in the U.S. If we count them as separate households and apply the national average 1.94 children per household, we can approximate that they have 774,060 children. Of those, 36%, or 278,662, are 12 to 17 years old enough to talk about or seek care for gender identity. Of those 278,662 kids, 3.3% are likely to identify as transgender. That's 9,196 kids. These are the kids that are at risk of receiving medical intervention in the form of drugs or surgery. So how many of these at-risk kids actually go on to receive drugs or surgery? From 2019 to 2021 averages, we know that 0.7% of transgender youth go on to receive medical intervention, with 0.04% of those being surgery. We do have more recent population data from 2024 showing that the population has roughly doubled since then. So in good faith, we will go on ahead and double our medical data as well, since 2024 medical data has not yet been released. So we're now saying 1.4% will receive medical intervention, with 0.08% of those being surgery. With our good faith assumption, we know that 129 kids out of the 9,196 kids will receive medical intervention, with 8 of those being surgery. Then we need to know how many of these children go on to regret their care. Studies show that minors have higher rates of regret than adults, but still low at 4.1%. So we can say that 4.1% of those 129 kids will regret their care. That is 6 kids, rounded up. To add perspective, we started at 278,662 kids, aged 12 to 17, who have at least one transgender parent. That is 0.002%. Let's take it one step further and change the claim from transgender parents to all LGBTQ+ households. We know there are 5 million kids being raised in LGBTQ+ households. We know 3.3% of them, or 165,000, will identify as transgender at some point in their lives. Here, we're not going to bother withholding for age. Using our doubled medical intervention rate of 1.4%, we get 2,310 kids getting medical intervention, with 132 of those being surgery. That is 0.003% of the minor population in the U.S. and 0.05% of the children in LGBTQ+ households. Well, we know from population data that approximately 93% of kids that identify as non-heterosexual are raised in straight cisgender households. Let's take it one step further and make an absurd assumption. Let's assume no cisgender parents ever allow their child to receive drugs or surgery. Using our 2019 to 2021 averages of minors receiving drugs and surgery and doubling it as we have been doing in good faith, we get 9,768 kids who will receive medical intervention in the forms of drugs or surgery, with 556 of those being surgery. That is 0.01% of the youth in the U.S., or 0.04% of the youth aged 12 to 17. When we assume that all of these kids come from LGBTQ+ households, that is 0.2% of the kids who live in LGBTQ+ households. Even with adding exceptional bias, we don't even reach 1/4% of kids who live in LGBTQ+ households, and we don't reach 0.1% for the youth population in the U.S. aged 12 to 17. So the idea that it is the LGBTQ+ community, or a segment of it, that is pushing hormone therapy or surgery on kids has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt to be demonstrably false. I made a long-form video breaking this all down in full detail with study data available over on YouTube. I even went so far as to review and discuss studies and articles cited by politically and religiously biased sources. Go check it out.